The wagon rattled into Ashford Creek with a girl who wasn't supposed to be there. She sat in the back, knees drawn to her chest, her dress torn at the hem and her hair matted with 3 days of desert dust. No one in town knew her name yet, but they'd remember the way she looked at the ground when Silas Drummond pulled her down from that wagon like she was cargo. The afternoon sun beat down on Main Street, turning the dirt to powder that rose in small clouds with every footfall. Shopkeepers paused in their doorways. Women whispered behind their hands. A rancher named Cole Winters watched from outside the feed store, his jaw tightening as Drummond's meaty hand clamped around the girl's thin arm. She couldn't have been more than 15. Cole had seen plenty in his 32 years, cattle drives that ended in stampedes, men shot over card games, winters that froze livestock where they stood. But something about the way this girl held herself, like a wild thing trying not to bolt, made his chest constrict. Drummond was known in these parts. He ran a boarding house on the edge of town, though everyone knew what kind of boarding house it really was. The law looked the other way because Drummond paid them to. "Move along, Winters," Drummond called out, noticing Cole's stare. His smile showed too many teeth. "Nothing here concerns you." Cole's hand rested on his belt, fingers drumming against the worn leather. He'd come to town for grain and fence wire, not trouble. But the girl's eyes flicked up for just a second, meeting his, and he saw something there that reminded him of a horse he'd once found tangled in barbed wire, terrified but not broken yet. "That girl looks like she could use some water," Cole said, keeping his voice level. "She'll get water at my place." Drummond's grip tightened. The girl winced but didn't cry out. The street had gone quiet. Even the piano music from the saloon had stopped. Cole took a step forward, then another. His boots crunched on the dry earth. He wasn't a big man, but he carried himself like someone who'd learned to stand his ground early and never forgot how. "I'm offering hospitality," Cole said. "Christian thing to do." Drummond's face reddened. "You calling me unchristian?" "I'm saying the girl looks thirsty." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the girl spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please." It was just one word, but it cut through the tension like a knife. Drummond's eyes narrowed. He was calculating something, whether Cole was worth the trouble, whether the girl was worth the fight. Finally, he shoved her forward, hard enough that she stumbled. "Take her then," Drummond spat. "But she's got nowhere else to go, Winters. Remember that. She'll be back at my door before sundown tomorrow, begging for a roof over her head." Cole caught the girl's arm before she fell. Her skin was hot from the sun, and he could feel her trembling. "We'll see about that," he said. Drummond climbed back onto his wagon and snapped the reins, disappearing in a cloud of dust. The street slowly came back to life. Conversations resumed, doors closed, the piano started up again. But Cole could feel eyes on them, judging, wondering what he'd just gotten himself into. "What's your name?" he asked gently. The girl stared at her feet. Her boots were too big, held together with twine. "Clara." "Clara what?" "Just Clara." He nodded. Some people came west trying to escape their names, their pasts, their ghosts. He wouldn't push. "I've got a ranch about an hour north of here. You can stay there tonight, get cleaned up, have a proper meal. After that, we'll figure something out." She looked up at him then, really looked, and he saw that her eyes were gray like storm clouds. There was suspicion there, and fear, but also a flicker of desperate hope. "Why?" she asked. It was a fair question. Cole thought about his own sister, dead 5 years now from fever, thought about how he'd failed to save her, how he'd been too late getting the doctor, thought about all the ways the world ground people down, especially women, especially young ones with no family and no money. "Because it's the right thing to do," he said finally. She studied him for another moment, then gave a small nod. They rode out of town on his horse, Clara sitting in front of him in the saddle because she said she'd never learned to ride properly. She held herself stiff at first, careful not to lean back against him, but after a while exhaustion won and she sagged a little. Cole kept the pace easy, letting the horse pick its way along the worn trail. The land opened up around them, scrub brush and rocky outcroppings, mountains purple in the distance, sky so big it made everything else feel small. Clara's breathing eventually evened out, and Cole realized she'd fallen asleep. He adjusted his grip on the reins, careful not to wake her. The ranch came into view as the sun started its descent toward the horizon. It wasn't much, a small house with a covered porch, a barn that needed new shingles, corrals that held a dozen horses and some cattle. But it was his, paid for with years of hard work and careful saving. His dog, a shaggy mutt named Bear, bounded out to greet them, tail wagging. Clara jerked awake at the barking. "It's all right," Cole said. "He's friendly." She didn't look convinced, but when Bear sniffed her hand and licked her fingers, she almost smiled. It transformed her face, made her look even younger. Inside, the house was simple but clean. Cole lit the lamps and stoked the fire in the stove. He showed Clara the washroom, gave her a clean shirt and some old trousers that had belonged to his ranch hand before the man moved on. She disappeared behind the door without a word. He heard the water running, heard her moving around. When she emerged 20 minutes later, she looked different, hair wet and combed, face scrubbed pink, wearing clothes that swallowed her small frame. She'd rolled up the sleeves and the cuffs, and there were bruises on her wrists that hadn't been visible before. Cole pretended not to notice. He busied himself making supper, beans and salt pork and biscuits that were probably too hard but would fill the belly. Clara sat at the table, watching him with those storm-gray eyes. "You live here alone?" she asked. "Mostly, had a hand helping out for a while, but he moved on. Been managing by myself since." "That why you brought me here? Need someone to cook and clean?" There was challenge in her voice, a hardness that didn't match her age. Cole set a plate in front of her and sat down with his own. "I brought you here because Silas Drummond is a bad man who does bad things," he said plainly. "Whatever arrangement he had for you, it wasn't going to end well." She stared at the food. "You don't know anything about me. Maybe I'm a thief. Maybe I'm worse." "Are you?" "No." "Then eat." She picked up her fork hesitantly, then started eating like she hadn't seen food in days. She probably hadn't. Cole ate slower, thinking. He'd acted on instinct in town, but now he had to figure out what came next. Clara couldn't stay here indefinitely. People would talk, and not kindly, but sending her back to Drummond wasn't an option. There had to be another way. "Where are you from?" he asked. "Kansas. My parents died of cholera last spring. I've got an aunt in California, but I didn't have money for the fare. Met a woman in Kansas City who said she'd help me get west if I worked for her. Turned out she was working for Drummond." Cole's jaw clenched. It was an old story, played out 1,000 times across the frontier. Girls promised legitimate work, ending up in situations they couldn't escape. "You got any proof of this aunt? Letters, an address?" Clara shook her head. "Drummond took my bag. Everything I had was in there." "We'll write her anyway, see if we can track her down." "And then what? I just wait here while you play Good Samaritan?" "You got a better idea?" She didn't answer, just pushed beans around on her plate. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. Cole stood and added wood to the fire. The silence stretched out, not quite comfortable, but not hostile either. Finally, Clara spoke again. "That man in town, Drummond, he said I'd be back. He said I had nowhere else to go. Men like him say a lot of things. But he's right, isn't he? I don't have anywhere, don't have anything." Cole turned to face her. "You've got a choice now, that's something." Her eyes welled up, but she blinked the tears back furiously. "I'm tired of choices that aren't really choices." He understood that. He'd been there himself once, when he was young and his father drank away the family farm. Sometimes the world narrowed down to impossible options, and you had to pick the least terrible one. "Get some rest," he said. "Tomorrow's soon enough to worry about what comes next." He gave her his bed and took the chair by the fire, Bear curled up at his feet. Sleep came slowly, and when it did, it was restless. The next morning dawned clear and cold. Cole woke to find Clara already up, trying to start a fire in the stove. She'd made a mess of it, used too much kindling, not enough airflow. He gently nudged her aside and showed her the trick of it. "Didn't they teach you this in Kansas?" he asked. "My mother always did it. I was supposed to learn, but," she trailed off, "there wasn't time." They worked through breakfast in relative silence. Clara was awkward in the kitchen, burning the bacon and oversalting the eggs, but Cole ate without complaint. Afterward, he showed her around the ranch, the barn where the horses nickered hopefully for treats, the chicken coop that needed new wire, the vegetable garden that was mostly weeds now. "It's a lot of work for one person," she observed. "It is. You could hire someone." Haven't found the right person yet." She looked at him sidelong. "I could work, earn my keep until we hear from my aunt." "You don't owe me anything, Clara." "I know, but I'm not good at sitting idle." There was pride in her voice and determination. Cole recognized it because he carried the same thing in himself, the need to be useful, to earn your place in the world. "All right," he said, "but we do this proper. I'll pay you wages, same as I'd pay any hand, and we'll set some rules." "Rules?" "You sleep in the main house. I'll take the room in the barn. We keep things appropriate and above board. I won't have people saying otherwise." She nodded slowly. "People are going to talk anyway." "Let them." They spent the day working, mending fence, mucking stalls, hauling water. Clara was clumsy at first, unused to physical labor, but she learned quick and didn't complain. By the time the sun set, they were both exhausted and covered in dust. That night, Cole wrote a letter to Clara's aunt, addressing it to general delivery in Sacramento. It was a long shot, but it was something. Clara watched him form the words, her expression unreadable. "What if she doesn't answer?" she asked. "Then we'll figure something else out." "You keep saying that. We'll figure it out, like it's easy." "It's not easy, but giving up is easier, and I've never been good at that." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Thank you for all of this. I don't know why you're doing it, but thank you." "You're welcome." The days fell into a rhythm after that. Clara worked hard, learning the ways of the ranch with fierce concentration. She stopped burning the food and started anticipating what needed doing before Cole asked. He taught her to ride, to rope, to shoot a rifle for scaring off coyotes. She taught him that silence didn't always need filling, that sometimes company was enough. But trouble has a way of finding those who try to avoid it. 3 weeks after Clara arrived, Cole rode into town for supplies and came back with a tight expression and news he didn't want to share. Clara was in the barn, brushing down one of the horses, when he found her. "Drummond's been asking around about you," he said without preamble, "saying you stole from him, saying I helped you do it." Clara's hands stilled on the brush. "I didn't steal anything." "I know, but he's got the sheriff's ear, and that's dangerous." "What do we do?" Cole leaned against the stall door, thinking. "We stand our ground. You didn't commit any crime, and neither did I, but you should know, if this goes bad, if the sheriff decides to take Drummond's side. Then I'll leave. I won't let you lose everything because of me." "That's not what I was going to say." She looked up at him, eyes fierce. "Well, that's what I'm saying. You've done more for me than anyone in my whole life. I won't repay that by ruining you." Something shifted in Cole's chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the sun. He'd grown accustomed to her presence, the way she hummed while working, the stubborn set of her jaw when she was trying to master something new, the rare smiles that lit up her whole face. He'd told himself he was just helping someone in need, but somewhere along the way it had become more than that. "You're not ruining anything," he said quietly. Before Clara could respond, they heard horses approaching. Cole moved to the barn door and felt his stomach drop. Sheriff Garrett and 2 deputies, with Silas Drummond riding behind them. "Stay here," Cole told Clara. "No." "Clara." "I said no, we face this together." They walked out to meet the men. Garrett was a heavy-set man with a beard gone gray and eyes that had seen too much to be surprised by anything. He dismounted slowly, his expression neutral. "Cole," he said by way of greeting. "Sheriff, I've got a complaint here. Mr. Drummond says this girl stole money from him and you aided in her escape. That's a lie, Clara said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. I never took anything from him. He bought me in Kansas City from a woman who promised me honest work. He was going to, she stopped, swallowed. He was going to make me do things I wouldn't do. Drummond's face purpled. She's a liar and a thief. Sheriff, I demand you arrest both of them. Garrett looked between Clara and Cole, then at Drummond. His expression gave nothing away. That's quite an accusation, Sealers. You got any proof of this theft? My word should be good enough. Should be, maybe, but it ain't. Garrett turned to Clara. Girl, you got anything to prove your story? No, sir. Like I said, he took my belongings. Convenient, Drummond sneered. What about witnesses? Cole interjected. Half the town saw you dragging her off that wagon. She was terrified. That don't look like someone who willingly came west to work for you. She got cold feet, that's all, changed her mind about our arrangement, then helped herself to my cash box before running off. If that were true, Cole said, his voice hardening, why'd you let her go so easy in town? Why didn't you raise hell right then and there? Drummond sputtered, but Garrett held up a hand. Cole's got a point, Sealers. Your story's got some holes in it. Are you taking his side over mine? I've contributed plenty to this town. I'm not taking anyone's side. I'm looking at the facts. Garrett's voice carried authority now. Far as I can tell, there's no evidence of theft. There's a girl who says she was deceived, and there's a man who says she wasn't. Without proof, I can't arrest anybody. This is an outrage. Maybe, but it's also the law. Garrett mounted his horse. Cole, you keep that girl out of trouble. Sealers, if you've got real evidence, bring it to me. Otherwise, let this drop. They rode away, leaving Drummond sitting on his horse, face twisted with fury. He pointed a finger at Cole. This isn't over, Winters. That girl belongs to me. She owes me a debt, and one way or another I'll collect. Touch her and you'll answer to me. Big words from a man living alone on a failing ranch. How long you think you can protect her? I've got friends in this territory. Powerful friends, you're nothing. Cole took a step forward, and Drummond's horse shied. Get off my land. For a moment, violence hung in the air like smoke. Then Drummond jerked his horse around and galloped away. Clara was shaking when Cole turned back to her. He wanted to comfort her, to say everything would be fine, but the words felt hollow. Drummond was right about one thing. He did have powerful friends, men who owned judges and lawmen who bent rules to suit their purposes. We need to be careful, Cole said. He's not going to let this go. Clara nodded. Maybe I should leave, head to California on my own. With what money, what supplies? Cole shook his head. No, you're safer here. But, no, we're in this together now. That night, Cole checked the locks twice and kept his rifle close. Clara sat by the fire, pretending to read a book but turning no pages. Bear sensed the tension and stayed close to her, his head on her knee. Cole, she said after a long while. Yes. Why are you doing this, really? He considered the question. There was the easy answer about doing what was right, about helping those in need. But Clara deserved more than platitudes. I had a sister, he said slowly. Mary. She got sick when I was 23. I didn't have money for a doctor, so I tried to earn it fast, took a job driving cattle through rough territory. By the time I got back, she was gone. He stared into the fire. I've spent 10 years wondering if I'd made different choices. If I'd just stayed, maybe she'd have lived. So when I see someone who needs help, I don't walk away. Can't walk away. Clara was quiet. Then, I'm not your sister. I know. And you can't save everyone. I know that too. But you're going to try anyway. Yes. She smiled, sad and understanding. Then I guess we're both stubborn fools. Guess so. The fire crackled. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain that wouldn't come. They sat in comfortable silence until Clara finally went to bed, leaving Cole alone with his thoughts and his ghosts. The trouble, when it came quietly. A week after the confrontation with Drummond, Cole woke to find 3 of his horses missing and the fence cut. 2 days later, someone started a fire in his hay barn, caught it just in time before the whole thing went up. Then the well rope was cut. Then supplies went missing from the root cellar. "It's Drummond," Clara said, her voice tight with guilt. "He's trying to bleed you dry, make you give me up." "I'm not giving you up." "Cole, look at what he's doing. He won't stop. He'll destroy everything you've built. Then I'll rebuild." But the attacks were taking their toll. Money was tight already, and now Cole had to replace stolen stock and repair sabotaged equipment. He rode out before dawn and came home after dark, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. Clara did what she could, but it wasn't enough. She lay awake at night, listening to Cole move around the barn where he still insisted on sleeping. He'd given her everything, his home, his protection, his livelihood, and she was watching it crumble. The guilt was a physical weight on her chest. Finally, she made a decision. On a grey morning, when Cole rode out to check the northern fence line, Clara packed a small bag. She left a note on the kitchen table, weighed down by a smooth stone she'd found by the creek. Then she saddled the gentlest horse and pointed it toward town. She knew what she was doing, knew that going back to Drummond might be the only way to save Cole. Maybe she could make some deal, work off whatever debt Drummond claimed she owed. Maybe in a year or 2 she'd have enough saved to buy her freedom. Or maybe. She didn't let herself finish that thought. The ride to town took longer than she remembered. The horse was slow, and Clara's riding skills were still shaky. By the time she reached Main Street, the sun was high and her courage was wavering. Drummond's boarding house sat at the edge of town, a 2-story structure with peeling paint and dirty windows. Clara tied the horse and forced herself to walk up the steps. She raised her hand to knock. The door swung open before her knuckles touched wood. Drummond stood there, a smile spreading across his face. "Well, well, I knew you'd come crawling back." Clara lifted her chin. "I want to make a deal." "Do you now?" He stepped aside. "Come in, let's talk." Every instinct screamed at her to run, but Clara thought of Cole's tired eyes, his failing ranch, everything he'd sacrificed. She walked inside. The interior was dimly lit and reeked of tobacco and cheap perfume. Women's voices drifted from upstairs, laughter that didn't sound happy. Drummond led her to a back office and closed the door. "So," he said, settling into a chair, "you want to deal. Here's my offer. You work for me for 2 years. After that, your debt is paid and you're free to go." "What kind of work?" Clara asked, though she already knew. "The profitable kind. You're young and pretty enough. You'll earn your keep." Bile rose in her throat. "And you'll leave Cole Winters alone. No more sabotage, no more attacks." "I'm a businessman, girl. I don't hold grudges." His smile was cold. "Once you're back where you belong, I've got no quarrel with Winters." Clara's hands clenched in her lap. 2 years. She'd be 17 when it was over if she survived. But Cole would be safe. His ranch would be safe. "All right," she whispered. "Excellent. I'll have papers drawn up." The office door slammed open, so hard it bounced off the wall. Cole stood in the doorway, fury radiating off him like heat. "Get away from her." Clara jumped to her feet. "Cole, no, I said get away from her." Cole's hand rested on his pistol, and his eyes were dangerous. Drummond rose slowly. "Winters, this is private property. You're trespassing." "Clara, get outside." "Cole, please, I'm trying to." "Outside, now." The command in his voice left no room for argument. Clara edged around Drummond and hurried out. In the hallway, she could hear the 2 men talking, voices low and tense. Then Cole emerged, grabbed her hand, and pulled her toward the exit. "How did you?" she started. "Found your note, rode like hell. You think I'm stupid, think I didn't know what you'd do." His voice was rough with emotion and anger. They burst out onto the street. Several townspeople stopped to stare. Clara tried to free her hand, but Cole held tight. "You had no right," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I was trying to save you." "By selling yourself, that's not saving, Clara, that's That's just dying slower. And what's your solution? Watch him destroy everything you've worked for. Watch him grind you down to nothing. Cole stopped walking. They stood in the middle of Main Street, dust swirling around their feet, while the whole town watched. Yes, he said simply, if that's what it takes. That's insane. Maybe, but I'm not letting you go back to him. I don't care what it costs. Clara stared at him, at this stubborn, impossible man who'd risked everything for a girl he barely knew, and suddenly she understood. This wasn't about his dead sister or his need to save people. This was about her, specifically her. Cole. I love you, he said, the words falling out clumsy and true. I know you're young, I know it's too soon, I know 100 reasons why I shouldn't say it, but I do, and I'm not letting Drummond have you, not now, not ever. The world seemed to pause. Clara felt something crack open in her chest, all the fear and loneliness and desperate hope she'd been carrying. She'd never had someone choose her before, not like this, not without conditions or expectations. I'm 15, she said, her voice shaking. I know. People will talk. Let them. I don't know if I love you back, not yet, maybe not for a long time. I know, he finally released her hand, but his eyes never left hers. I'm not asking you to love me, Clara. I'm asking you to trust me, to let me help you without throwing yourself away to protect me. She thought about Kansas, about her parents' grave left behind, about the aunt in California she might never find, about all the terrible choices she'd faced and the doors that had closed one by one until there was only darkness. Cole was offering light, not a rescue, not a fairy tale, just a chance, a real one. Okay, she whispered, okay. He pulled her into a hug, and she let herself lean against him, let herself be 15 and scared and protected for just a moment. Behind them, she heard Drummond's voice shouting from the boarding house, but it sounded far away and unimportant. We should go, Cole said against her hair, before he causes more trouble. They walked to their horses together. The town watched them leave, and Clara knew they'd be gossip for months, knew that life wouldn't be easy, that Drummond might find other ways to strike at them. But she also knew that Cole meant what he said. He'd stand by her, no matter what came. As they rode out of Ashford Creek, the afternoon sun broke through the clouds, turning the dusty landscape golden. Clara looked back once at the town, at the boarding house with its peeling paint and dark windows. Then she turned forward toward the ranch, toward whatever future waited there. She still had dust in her hair, but for the first time in longer than she could remember, she also had hope. The months that followed were hard, but they were honest. Cole hired 2 hands to help with the ranch work, men he trusted who asked no questions about Clara's presence. The sabotage stopped, whether because Drummond gave up or because Cole made it clear he'd involve federal marshals if it continued. Clara never knew. She turned 16 that winter, and Cole threw her a small party with cake and candles. The hands sang off-key, and Bear stole a piece of cake off the table, and Clara laughed until her sides hurt. It wasn't the life she'd imagined as a girl in Kansas, but it was hers, and it was real. Spring came, bringing rain and green grass and a letter from California. Clara's aunt had written back. She'd moved to Oregon, but would welcome Clara if she wanted to come. The letter sat on the kitchen table for 3 days while Clara stared at it, weighing possibilities. You should go, Cole said finally, if that's what you want. Clara traced the envelope's edges. She's family, I should want to go. But you don't. No, she looked up at him. Is that wrong? Cole smiled, slow and genuine. No, it's not wrong. I still don't know if I love you, she admitted. Not the way you love me. I know. But I think maybe someday I could. That's enough. And it was. They had time, years of it stretching out ahead of them like the open plains. Time for Clara to grow, to heal, to discover who she was beyond the frightened girl who'd arrived in a wagon. Time for Cole to show her that not all men were like Drummond, that kindness could exist without conditions. The girl with dust in her hair stayed at the ranch, and as seasons turned and years passed, She learned that home wasn't a place you were born or a place you planned to go. Sometimes home was a man who'd risked everything, a dog named Bear, and a piece of land where the wind sang through the grass and the sky went on forever. Sometimes home was just choosing to stay.